Church, this is absolutely incredible. It's still astonishing to me that with everything going on in this world, you're choosing faith, you're choosing sacrifice, you're choosing joy, you're choosing to be relentlessly unstoppable in your generosity so that more people can meet Jesus. And I can't believe that almost 1,000 new people have joined us on this journey as well. And so many of you are choosing to commit to finish strong or to increase your commitment. Let me encourage you at this midpoint of our 2-year unstoppable journey. I believe the best is yet to come. I believe God still wants us to reach our secondary goal of 50 million and to continue reaching more people in our communities and beyond. So let's continue boldly into year 2 of this journey. Church, thank you for your unstoppable faith, your unstoppable generosity. God is moving mountains and He's choosing to use us in order to do it. Let's continue to be humble, to be bold, and to be unstoppable.
Hey, you can celebrate that if you want, you know. You guys got to sleep in on Sunday, and the first hour was already more lively than you were. So you got to wake up, all right? Because this pastor needs some help this morning, all right? Hey, welcome to Compass. Our mission is navigating people to God. My name's Nate, one of the pastors here, and we're so glad that you're worshiping with us, whether that's in the room. We want to welcome those of you who are worshiping at home as well. And if you're a guest, if this is your first time, extra special welcome to you today. We would love to meet you. We'd love to connect with you. If you're in the room, I hope you'll stop by our Next Steps area, which is just out the doors here to my right. We've got a gift for you. It's our way of saying thanks for being with us today. Maybe you've got some questions. We would love to answer those questions for you. I'll be in there afterwards. I'd love to meet you as well. And if you're worshiping at home, you can text or you can drop in the comment section that you're a guest, and we will send you a digital connection card that you can fill out. It's our way of saying thanks for being with us. We'll send you a gift as well. And we're glad that you're here. And today's a big week. I mean, we are celebrating. We have a ton to celebrate all that God is doing here. We believe, though, that the best is still yet to come. And there's so much more that God's going to do. I mean, think about it. How awesome is it as a church across all of our campuses, over $47 million committed to Unstoppable? Amazing, isn't it? And that's just one of the things that we're celebrating today. It's a celebration week because we are doing baptisms. We've been doing baptisms since last Sunday. It started Sunday morning here at our campus. We had someone come up after the end of this service and they got baptized. And then all throughout the week across our campuses, we've seen people make decisions to get baptized. And up to right now, in this moment, real time across campuses, we have had 40 baptisms across our campuses. So it's exciting to see what God is doing this morning and this week. And I'm hoping and I'm praying that maybe some of you, that would be a decision that you would make in this moment today. Like you didn't even know you were gonna do it, but that you're gonna step into faith, that you're gonna come forward a little bit later and you're gonna make that decision. And we've got everything for you. We've got towels, we've got clothes to change into, we've got it all. We're prepared for you. And so we have been praying that maybe some of you, that's the decision that you would make. Now, as we begin today, I wanna show you a picture that represents a little bit about what we're talking about. This picture is an iconic picture from May 7th, 1989. It's a day when this guy whose name is Michael Jordan, he made this incredible shot. Now, we just gotta all settle something here real fast, all right? When it comes to the greatest player of all time, the GOAT, this is the guy. Can we all agree to that, right? I'm sorry, students, I know some of you are like, it's LeBron James. It ain't LeBron, all right? It ain't ever gonna be LeBron, it's MJ. And MJ, he hit this shot over Cleveland Cavaliers guard Craig Elo. It sent the Cleveland Cavaliers home and the Chicago Bulls onto the next round of the NBA playoffs. And that shot has been played on repeat over the years of Michael Jordan hitting this buzzer beater over Craig Elo. Now, here's why I show you that picture today. When it comes to the church, there's one of two ways that people oftentimes see the church. One of the ways that they can see us is they can see us like Michael Jordan and his teammates celebrating because we've hit that shot, and there's joy because of what we know we found in Jesus. We can be that way, all right? So that's why we celebrate. Or people can oftentimes see the church more like Craig Elo and the Cleveland Cavaliers in this moment, demoralized and defeated. And so today we want to talk about how from the very beginning, God's plan for his people is that we would be a people known for celebrating life together. And so we're continuing this series that we're in called March Madness. And we want to talk today, how do we find joy in the circumstances that we're in and why we should celebrate no matter what is happening in our lives, because as Christ followers, there's something even greater that we get to look forward to, and that life should look a lot like those celebrations at the buzzer beater moments in the final minutes of a basketball game. Now, I love what Philip Yancey, who is an author, describes the church as. I hope this is the way that we are always described as the church. This is what he says. He says, the church is like a victorious locker room. It's a place to exalt, to give thanks, to celebrate the great news of all that is forgiven, that God is love, and that victory is certain. You know, when I think about that image, I think this is what the church has to be like, that we should be this victorious locker room. So if you agree with something that we say on stage, you should celebrate that, right? You can get excited. It's okay to raise your hands, be giving thanks to God because of all that he's done, knowing that victory is certain. And I hope that that's what you find here at Compass. Like maybe you walked in and you're like, I don't know about this whole thing. You're allowed to celebrate here. Like, I actually encourage you to celebrate. You can make some noise during my message. I actually preach better when you engage with me, right? And there we go. Let's go. Who's in with me today? Because we are a church that wants to look like a victorious locker room. And I realize that may not have been the experience that you've had with the church before. Like maybe rather than the church feeling like a victorious locker room, the church you've attended in your past felt more like a funeral home. And I gotta promise you, that ain't ever gonna be Compass nor Fort Worth, right? Because what I hope that you'll hear today is that as Christ followers, we have been called to celebrate all that God has done. Actually, I wanna say this. You know, when you look at Jesus' life, what you see about Jesus is that Jesus loved a good party. Now, I gotta also give a little side note here. It's not the kind of party like our boy King Xerxes from last week that we talked about in Esther's story. Jesus was not the frat boy partying type. He wasn't like the hangover Animal House guy, but he loved a good celebration. And that's what we're digging into today. So listen, if you're new to this whole Christianity thing and church and Jesus, I hope what you hear in today's message is that it's a picture of what we here at Compass and what Compass we believe we're called to do. And for those of us who call Compass our church home, that this will give us an even greater understanding of why we do the things that we do, of why we celebrate and we rejoice when there's baptisms, of why we do a generosity initiative in the middle of a pandemic like Unstoppable, and we raise more than $47 million to help people here in DFW, across the United States and around the globe, because we want to be a people, we want to be a church that is celebrating and letting other people know about who Jesus is and what he's come to do for us. This is what we're called to as the church. So, if you've got a Bible, or if you've got a Bible app on your smartphone, I want you to turn with me to the book of Luke. We're going to be in Luke chapter 15 today. And at the beginning of Luke, it talks about this time where Jesus is addressing the religious leaders of Jesus' day who didn't understand why Jesus was doing the things that he does. And so we'll start in verse 1. I'm actually going to read from the Message paraphrase for this first part here because I love how it sets it up. But this is what it says starting in verse 1. By this time, a lot of men and women of doubtful reputation were hanging around Jesus, listening intently. The Pharisees and the religion scholars were not pleased, not at all pleased. They growled, "He takes in sinners and he eats meals with them, treating them like old friends." Well, their grumbling triggered this story. Now, let me stop here for a minute before I go on, because I think it's important to note what Luke, who's writing this and retelling this account, is saying. He wanted the readers, he wanted us to understand what the holdup was that the religious leaders had with Jesus. You see, the issue was this, is that Jesus was attracting a crowd of people, sinners, as the religious leaders called them, and he was eating with them and he was partying with them like it was 1999, right? Like basically, they were good friends to Jesus, and he was treating them like they were old friends. And so the fact that Jesus is eating with them, well, in the religious leaders' minds, it made him guilty by association. In fact, the Pharisees were known as people who would never go near someone like this. That they would never eat with someone like this. They would never associate with someone who was, in their minds, a sinner. In fact, they would turn and head the other direction. They would never try to point them towards God. Instead, they would try to avoid them at all costs. And in so doing, what they were doing is they were missing the point of what we are called to as Christ followers. You see, here's the problem with the religious leaders. They knew the scriptures. I mean, they memorized everything that the Old Testament law had to say. There were more than 600 laws. Well, they followed the laws. They knew everything. They had the rules down. But for them, it was more about rules than it was about a relationship. But what Jesus is calling us to, what Jesus wants us to understand is that it's not about rules with God. It's about a relationship. I love what it says in verse 2. It says that Jesus, he takes in these sinners. The Greek word here is literally translated receives. So basically what Jesus is doing is he's receiving someone in as a family member. What Jesus did is he had this open-armed embrace to the people that he came in contact with, and that's what he modeled for us, and it's about a relationship. That's what Jesus wants us to understand. And when Jesus welcomed someone in, he welcomed them as a relative. I think most likely you could see it as like a son or a daughter. So he didn't see a tax collector. He didn't see a prostitute. He didn't see an outcast. He sees a son or a daughter who had just gotten off course and just needed a little help getting back on track. He didn't see someone who needed to be told everything that they'd been done that is wrong in their life and how they needed to change things. Unfortunately for the religious leaders, they had a different view of themselves. You see, they didn't see where they were off in their own lives. They couldn't see their own sin. They couldn't see how they made mistakes in their own lives. And so they looked at Jesus and they were like, can you believe this guy? He eats with sinners. Are you kidding me? They didn't understand why Jesus was doing the things that he did. And my guess is that there are some of you here today. There are some of you at home that you have been hurt by someone who called themselves a Christian. That you've been hurt by the church in your past because rather than acting the way that Jesus acted, they acted more like the religious leaders of Jesus' day. And if that's you, if that's been your experience with the church, if that's been your experience with Christians, if that's been your experience with some pastor in your past, let me just say this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, because that is not who we are called to be as Christ followers, and that is not who we are called to be as the church. And I want you to know that here at Compass North Fort Worth, this is a place, I promise you, that this is a place where you will feel loved and accepted, not outcast or unwanted, that this is a place for messy people because we are all messy people. And what Jesus is showing us in this moment is that the body of believers is for all people because Jesus is for all people. Hey, I like this now. You guys are into it now. You woke up somewhere along the way, and I didn't even give you a coffee this morning. So Jesus, he has these guys that just don't get it. They're sitting there. And as Jesus is saying all this, he decides to set the record straight by telling 3 different parables or stories. So if you've got your Bible, we'll pick back up in verse 3 and following, and this is what Jesus says. It says, so Jesus told them this story. If a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go to search for the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. And when he arrives, he will call together his friends and his neighbors, say, rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep. In the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Won't she light a lamp and sweep the entire house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she will call in her friends and her neighbors and say, rejoice with me, because I have found my lost coin. In the same way, there is more joy in the presence of God's angels when even one sinner repents. Now, I want to stop here for a minute, and for the sake of time today, I'm not going to read the entire 3rd parable, but we'll get to it in a minute. But I really want to point out what Jesus, he is modeling, what he's honing in on in these stories. Ultimately, what Jesus wanted us to understand is this. This is why I do what I do. This is why I eat with the broken, the addicted, the outcast, or as the religious leaders called them, as sinners. And to help them understand this, and even for us to understand this better, he starts to tell these stories of things that have been lost. So he starts with a lost sheep, and then he moves to a lost coin, and we didn't read the third story, but he talks about a lost son in the third parable. And what we see Jesus doing here is he was trying to change the mindset of the religious leaders to help them understand what it was all about and why he was hanging out with these lost people. And what Jesus is ultimately doing in this moment is he's calling out the religious leaders for the wrong thinking that they had. You know, when something's lost, really what that means is it's not where it's supposed to be, right? It's out of place. It can't be used the way that it's supposed to. And the only way that it goes back to being where it needs to be is if it gets found. The only way it can be used the way it's supposed to be is if it gets found. You see, in order for something, though, to be found, it first has to be lost. And what Jesus is trying to open the eyes of the religious leaders and for us to see is that because of sin, well, we all start out as lost. And it isn't until we are found by God that we are no longer lost anymore. It's why Jesus came. Luke chapter 19, verse 10, it says this, "For the Son of Man came to seek and to save those who are lost." Jesus' mission was to help the lost get found. The Pharisees, though, they couldn't understand Jesus' passion for lost people. They didn't understand how he could eat with these people, but Jesus was different. He wanted to be around them. And that's what attracted people to him. And I think that's what will attract people to Compass is if we show that we are for everyone, not just certain people, that we are for everyone. And because what Jesus did is that he attracted people to them. And then what he did is he showed them that he could give them hope. And as the church, that's what we need to do as well. And look, there are a lot of people in our world right now who are lost and feeling hopeless. My guess is in this room, maybe that describes you. Maybe at home, that describes you right now. And maybe you've tried to find hope in all these different things. You've tried to find hope in a relationship, or you've tried to find hope in a job or a business venture, or you've tried to model or find hope in the obtaining of wealth and possessions. And what you found is that none of those things can fill this void in your life, that there just seems to be this void and there's something that is missing. And what I hope that you find today is that there's someone that can fill that void in your life, and his name is Jesus. Can I be honest with you? One of the reasons that Compass North Fort Worth exists today is because we want to be a church that invites people to the party, just like Jesus did. That we want to help those who are lost, those who are out of place, those who are searching, those who are broken, those who are addicted, find their hope in Jesus. And as a church, this is what we've been called to. And look, this is no small task. Like if you look around, I mean, there are people moving into this community all the time. There's no small task here, but there's a lot of people who need Jesus. And this isn't something that's optional either. This is something that we must do because it matters that much. And this is what Jesus wanted the religious leaders to understand, but they just didn't get it. Now, there's two things from this stories that Jesus tells that I want us to notice here. The first thing I want us to notice is this. Do you notice the sense of urgency? I mean, the shepherd, he had 100 sheep. He loses one. And as soon as he loses the one sheep, he goes searching for it. He doesn't wait around for backup to come. He doesn't wait for somebody to take over for the next shift. No, he goes immediately and he starts looking for the sheep. Why? Because that's what you do when something's lost, right? You immediately go looking for it. And for those of us who have experienced the feeling of being found by God, then here's what we have to understand. Our job is to go out and to find others who are lost. The woman who lost the coin, she too had a sense of urgency. I mean, I imagine this woman, she's like looking everywhere for this coin. In her house, she's tearing it up. She went to the couch, she's pulling up the couch cushions, she's looking in the little crevices. She couldn't find it there, so she went to the kitchen. She looked under the refrigerator and the stove. It's not there. She goes to the laundry room. She checks pockets. It's not in the pockets. She checked the washer and dryer, make sure it didn't fall out when she was doing the wash. It's still not there. She even went out into the garage in the car, and she checked in the little crevices between the car seat and the console, you know, where everything seems to fall. I mean, she was looking everywhere until she finds this coin because it was valuable. And look, some of you might argue, but why would they do this? Why would the shepherd leave the 99 behind? Why? For one, aren't the 99 valuable? Or this woman, she had 9 other coins. I mean, what's the big deal? She only lost 1. But I think here's what Jesus wanted us to understand is this. One lost person is one too many. So we need to have this sense of urgency about us to find those who are missing, because what Jesus is saying here is this. Listen, when one person is found, when one person is saved, heaven celebrates. And friends, I want you to understand that 1 is an important number here at Compass. 1 is a really important number. It's so important that here's what I'm going to challenge you to, okay? I want to challenge you to help us fill the empty seats in these rooms. At 9 o'clock and at 10:30, there are empty seats. What if we started to invite those that we know to be a part of what God is doing here at Compass? What if one person that you invited attended with you? I guarantee what would happen is there wouldn't be enough room for everyone in this place. And we'd have to think about more services, and more people would come to this relationship with Jesus, and we would make an impact that would change not just this community, it would change our city, it might change our state, it might impact the world. The reason that Compass is here today, the reason this campus exists, I want to tell you this, is about 4.5 years ago. There was a group of leaders here at Compass who said, you know what, we can't be complacent. We can't just be a church that's in Colleyville, a church that's in Roanoke, and a church that's online. We need to be a church that is reaching even further. So they decided in 10 weeks of one another to start a campus in North Richland Hills and this campus here in North Fort Worth. Because our mission here at Compass, we say it every week, it's navigating people to God, right? So what are we trying to do? We are trying to take as many people to heaven with us one day as we possibly can, and that's what Jesus calls us to. That's what he was trying to get the religious leaders to understand. So it's first about urgency, but then Jesus goes on to show that we also must have this sense of persistence about us as well. I mean, the shepherd, think about this. He could have easily stopped looking for the sheep after just a few minutes. I mean, he's got to get back to the 99. Maybe in his mind he was thinking that, but that's not what the shepherd does. It says that the shepherd kept looking for the sheep until he finds it. And the same is true of the woman. Like, she could have looked around the house for like 10 or 15 minutes trying to find this lost coin and then been like, you know what, I got 9 other coins. I'm okay without one. But that's not what she does either. Jesus says that she looks carefully until she finds it because it was valuable. Now, side note here, you can maybe mark this in here. I think there's a reason why Jesus chose a woman in the second story. The reason is this, guys, we know this, right? Like, if we were looking for it, we would have done the man look and then we've been done, right? Jesus wanted us to understand, we gotta be persistent like the ladies in the house here today, right? Who are always know where everything is at, right? And they're gonna look until he finds it, and that's how we need to be as Christ followers. As Christ followers, we can't become complacent. We have to have urgency and persistence about us. Like we should never have this mindset. I'm good. I accepted Jesus. I got baptized. I did my part. I made it to heaven. Hallelujah. Like, I know when I got baptized, that can never just be our mindset. We've got to be persistent in helping other people find Jesus, because lost people matter to God and lost people have to matter to us as well. And honestly, we should want to see videos like the video I want you to watch right now. Take a look at this. We should want to see videos like that every single week here at Compass. And you know, that was just the start of what God has been doing. When we started this morning, there were 23 people this week who had been baptized. I just checked my phone while that video was going on. We're at 49 right now, and it's counting, right? Friends, as a church, we want to make sure that those who don't know Jesus get the chance to experience him. And we should want other people to know and experience the hope that is Jesus. We should want them to experience the love that we've experienced. We should want them to experience the grace and the mercy that we've experienced in Jesus. It's like when you find that place to eat that's so good that you start telling everybody else about it, right? And what do? Like you don't just tell them, like students, I know what you do. You do TikTok videos, right? You're like, oh, you got to check this place out. It's dope, right? And then like, old people, we tweet because that's what we got, right? And then some of you go Facebook and you're like, oh, you got to check this out, and you leave a review there. You give 5 stars, right? And we let people know when we like something, we tell people about it. And that's what we're called to as the church. And listen, when it comes to Compass North Fort Worth, like I got to say this as your pastor, I am so proud of a church that isn't afraid to tell other people about what God is doing here. Like the reason why this campus has grown and exploded with growth over the last 5 months since we moved into this building is because many of you have said, hey, you got to check this place out. You got to be a part of what God is doing here. And I want to encourage you, don't stop now. Like we've got more work to do because the harvest is plentiful, right? And there are people who need to hear about Jesus. And listen, I want to challenge you. You've got 2 weeks till Easter. As you leave today, I hope that you'll grab several of these cards and that you'll begin to hand these to people that you know in your life who need to be a part of what God is doing here at Compass. And you'll invite them to Easter because Easter at Compass, man, that's one of the easiest times of the year to invite someone. People are more open and receptive at Easter than maybe any other time of the year to come and be a part of what God is doing here. So I hope that you'll take it seriously to invite people to the party. But I hope that you'll share on TikTok. I hope that you'll do Instagram, whatever you do, whatever social media. I hope if it's like email, whatever you use, right? Or text message, just tell people about what God's doing here, all right? And this is what Jesus is getting at. He wanted the religious leaders to understand that the reason that he was hanging out with sinners, the outcasts, and the no-names of society is he wanted them to know there was hope for them. It's why he came to this earth. So listen, if you're new, like if you just walked in here maybe for the first time today, here's what I hope that you hear today, is that we want you to experience the love and the hope that is Jesus in this place. Now, for those of us who already have this relationship, and we've got to understand that there's still way more work to do. That we've been called to share what we know with others. And look, helping others find Jesus ought to give us this incredible sense of joy because what was once lost has been found. You see, when the shepherd, he found the lost sheep, he could have done one of two things. He could have brought the sheep back and he could have punished the sheep because that would have been the normal thing to do in that day. If a sheep wandered off, to keep it from wandering, what they would tend to do is they would break the leg of the sheep so it wouldn't wander anymore. But that's not what the shepherd does. Verses 5 and 6, it says, and when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. And when he arrives, he will call together his friends and neighbors saying, rejoice with me because I have found my lost sheep. And then notice the pattern. When what was lost gets found, there's a celebration. The same thing happens with the woman. I mean, she throws a party after finding the coin, which it seems a little bit ridiculous because you think to yourself, man, I bet you that party cost more than the coin that she lost was. But she throws a party anyway. Why? Because in both stories, these people are filled with joy because what was once lost has been found. And this sense of joy should be the same kind of joy that we have when people who have been on the run from God, when people who have been going in the opposite direction from God, who are broken, who are lost, who are searching, they turn around and they head home. And notice what Jesus says in verse 7. It says, in the same way, there's more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. And then Jesus says almost the same thing in verse 10. He says, in the same way, there is joy in the presence of God's angels when one sinner repents. Now look, I don't know who needs to hear this today, but I want you to hear this. You matter to God. You matter to God. And heaven rejoices when people turn to God. Now, Luke, he wanted to drive home this, so he tells one more story in Luke 15. Actually, Luke, who is recounting this, he says this in verse 11. He says, to illustrate the point further, Jesus tells them this story. Now, I imagine, like, Jesus is looking at these guys, and they're just not getting it. Like, they're glazed over, like, what in the world is Jesus talking about? And I wonder if Jesus was like, hello, McFly, anybody home? Like, come on, you guys got to get this, right? And this story is one that maybe you're more familiar with than any of the other stories. But Jesus tells the story of this lost son. He talks about a man who has two sons. There's a younger son who's the wayward son. And the wayward son, he asked his father for the family inheritance early. He wants to go and he wants to do his own thing. And so his father agrees. He gives the son the money, and the son runs off. And after nights and nights of like what happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas moments, he blows through everything that he has. And he's left with nothing. He has no hope. Life hasn't gone the way that he'd hoped. He has nowhere to go. He has no place to stay. He has no money. And so he gets a job. He's feeding these pigs. But the job really doesn't pay enough. He can barely pay for the things that he has. And so he ends up having to eat the same food that he's feeding the pigs. And it gets so bad that he doesn't have enough money for a place to stay. So now he's staying in the same pig pen with the pigs that he's feeding. And in this moment, as this son thinks about this, he thinks to himself, man, things have gotten really bad. And I don't know if it's days or weeks or months, but there comes this moment where he realizes, I can't live like this anymore. Maybe I should return home. And so he begins to think about, how could I even do this? Like, I don't even think my father will restore me to my position in the family. I'm not even asking for that, actually. He thinks to himself, maybe I can just ask my father to hire me back as one of his hired servants, because that would be better than what I'm dealing with now. And so he decides to return home. When he returns home, we get to verse 20, Luke chapter 15. It says, so he returned home to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming, filled with love and compassion. He ran to his son, he embraced him, and he kissed him. I love this picture that we get here. Imagine this for a minute. The son, he had been gone for some time, and my guess is the father, every single day, he maybe went into his son's room in the morning to check to see if his son had maybe come home sometime in the middle of the night, that he'd snuck back in the house. Or maybe before bed, he would check his son's room to see if maybe he had snuck in when he didn't see him, looking and hoping that his son would return home. And then this one day comes. And the father, he had checked the room, the son wasn't there, but he went and he looked out the window, and as he looked out the window, he saw the shadow of what looked like his son. He could tell from the physique and the physical attributes that it was his son, even though he was far off in the distance. And so the father, in this moment of seeing his son, he takes off and he runs towards his son. This isn't a jog. This is a full-out sprint. Can you sense the joy in the father's response? Like his son who was lost is returning home. And just like the father, you want to know what makes God run? It's lost people. See, God runs towards us. He's in this relentless pursuit of us because we are lost, but he wants us to be found. And then when we've been found by God, then our job as Christ followers is to run towards those who we know who are lost as well. It means that we're eating with them. It means that we're hanging out with them. It means that we're going to the people and the places that might make other people go, why in the world are they doing that? Why are they hanging out with those people? And the reason is because that's what Jesus modeled for us. And just like in the story of the lost sheep and the lost coin, listen to what the Father says about the Son who has returned. Verses 23 and 24, it says, "We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he's found." So the party began. Unlike the sheep who was lost, because that's what sheep tend to do, they wander. Unlike the coin that was lost because it was neglected, what we see in the story of the son is that the son was lost because of his own rebellion. And what Jesus wants us to understand is that because of sin, we're all like the lost son who has rebelled against the Father. But when we turn around and come home, what we have to understand is that the Father is always standing there waiting with arms open, ready to receive us back. I love this quote that I came across that describes this so well. It says, "There's as much joy in being found as there is panic in being lost. It's the same with being found by Jesus." Friends, Jesus came to seek and to save that which was lost. And when one person makes a decision to follow Christ with their life, well, heaven throws a party. Because one more person being found means that one less person is lost. One more person being found means that one more person gets to enter into heaven with us one day. And that's what it's all about. For some of you here today, for some of you at home, my guess is that you feel lost, that you feel hopeless. Maybe you've been abandoned. But my hope is that today you've heard there's a God that loves you. There's a God that's for you. There's a God that pursues you. There's a God that wants to fill you with hope. And maybe today is the day for you to accept the hope that Jesus offers. Because what you've heard today is this, is that you're loved and you're accepted. You're not an outcast. You're not unwanted. That you're valued. That you're worthy. And you matter to God. You see, the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son, that's us. But our story doesn't have to end with us being lost either. Because God sent Jesus to this earth to die for our sins. He came and he took on the weight of everything that we did for us, and so we don't have to be lost. All that God asks us to do is turn around and head back home and come to him. And so today we're gonna sing this song here in a minute. And like so many others have already decided to do this week, maybe today is the day where you need to make the best decision of your life to follow Jesus and to get baptized. And so as we sing this song today, I wanna invite you, you come and you grab one of these towels up front here. And then you just head out to the back and we'll do baptisms during the service. Or maybe you're here today and you kind of can relate to this son who was at home and then he wandered away and he wants to come back. And maybe you had this relationship with Jesus, but then you turned away and you ran away from Jesus, and maybe you need to return to him. Maybe it's time to rededicate your life. We want to invite you to do that as well. We've got some decision cards up front here. And maybe that's a decision that you need to make today. You can come to the front and declare that. Or maybe you've got something going on in your life and you just need prayer for that. We want to invite you to come to the front as well as we sing this song today. But as we sing this song, if God's been stirring in you this decision to follow him with your life for the first time, or maybe return to him, I want to invite you to make that decision. Take bold courage and step out in faith to what God is calling you to today. Because God is for you. God loves you, and God desires a relationship with you. So right now, I want to invite you to stand where you're at. If you're in the room, you can come forward. If you're watching at home, you can text the word Baptism Week to 94,000. We would love to talk to you more about this decision. Would you come as we sing this song today?